There is a number I want you to sit with for a second before I say anything else. 3%. That is the U.S. personal savings rate right now, in 2026. 3%. Not 3% of your income going towards something exciting. 3% is what's left over after everything else eats first. The long-run average, going back to 1959, is 8.4%. We are sitting at less than half of that. Americans are collectively carrying over $1.25 trillion in credit card debt right now, at an average interest rate above 21%. That is not a typo. 21% on money that was mostly spent on things nobody will remember buying by next spring. And yet, somewhere in every single city, there is a person making the same salary as everyone around them, living in the same overpriced apartment, paying the same grocery bill, who is not panicking, who has a cushion, who does not flinch when the car makes a weird noise or the fridge dies. It is almost never the person with the flashy car or the loudest life. It is the quiet one, the one wearing the same coat for 3 winters straight, who somehow never seems one bad week away from disaster. For a long time, I assumed people like that were just lucky, or secretly rich, or both. Then I started actually paying attention to how they lived, and the same handful of habits kept showing up, over and over, and an unreasonable number of them traced back to Japan, to a culture that has been quietly, boringly good with money for over a century, while debt is treated there as something you actively avoid, not something you simply live inside of. None of what I'm about to show you needs luck. None of it needs a bigger paycheck. And by the end of this, I think you'll understand exactly why the wealthiest people you know are almost never the ones who look wealthy. I'm Drek. Let's get into it. 2 years ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at a pile of things I had bought and barely remembered buying. Candles I didn't need. A phone case for a phone I was about to upgrade anyway. A kitchen gadget still sealed in its box, sitting next to the last kitchen gadget I'd bought and never opened. My card statement that month said $4,100 in charges. My savings account said $812. I wasn't reckless. I had a steady paycheck. I just had no operating system underneath the spending. No filter. No pause button. Somewhere around that week, I stumbled onto something that reframed the entire problem for me. And it wasn't a budgeting app or a spreadsheet template. It was a much older idea. In Japan, there's a word, mottainai, and it doesn't translate cleanly into English, which is part of why almost nobody outside Japan has heard of it. It's the feeling of quiet regret when something useful, money, time, food, effort, gets wasted. Not guilt exactly. More like a small physical discomfort. In Japanese culture, wasting a resource is treated as something close to a small moral failure. In America, waste is basically load-bearing infrastructure for the entire consumer economy. The USDA estimates American households waste around 30% of the food they buy. That's roughly $2,100 a year, per household, thrown straight in the garbage. We replace phones every 2 to 3 years, when most are engineered to last 4. We treat slightly worn as a synonym for trash. That gap between a culture that treats waste as shameful and one that's built an entire economy on top of it is where this whole video lives. 10 habits, all quiet, all boring, all stupidly effective. And I promise you, by habit 4, you're going to recognize exactly where your own money has been leaking without you ever noticing. The first habit is yarikuri. It roughly means making it work, the everyday art of stretching what you already have instead of automatically reaching for more. Picture a Japanese grandmother standing at her kitchen counter, looking at half an onion, a cup of leftover rice, 2 eggs, and yesterday's vegetables, and turning all of it into a warm dinner without a second trip to the store. That's yarikuri. It's the exact opposite of opening the fridge, deciding it looks a little empty, and ordering $40 of takeout while feeling worse after you eat than before. Here's the mindset underneath it. Before you spend new money, you stop and ask what you already have that could do the job. That sounds too small to matter. It's the difference between a household that leaks money every single week and one that quietly doesn't. I started doing this in my own kitchen first, because that's exactly where my money used to vanish without a trace. One night a week. No shopping allowed, just whatever's already in the cupboard. My family started calling it mystery dinner night, and it turned into something closer to a game than a punishment. That one habit alone saves us close to $200 a month, which is more than a lot of households keep in emergency savings. And it spreads. Once you start asking, what do I already have about food? You start asking it about clothes, about the gadget you were about to order at midnight. Yarikuri isn't deprivation. It's looking at a cupboard that was full enough the whole time. If you want to try it this week, pick one night, open your fridge and your cupboards, and make dinner using only what's already sitting in there. No swap for takeout because it's easier. No quick run to the store for the one missing ingredient. Just you, the odd half-used things on the shelf, and a little creativity. The first time, you'll feel mildly annoyed and a little cornered. By the second or third time, you'll feel something closer to pride. Number 2, choken. This is the plain old savings habit, but the Japanese version has a stubbornness to it that I genuinely love. Choken means you pay yourself first, before the bills, before the wants, before the money has any chance to quietly disappear. Picture a small jar on a high shelf, or a quiet automatic transfer that fires off the morning your paycheck lands, while you're still asleep and can't talk yourself out of it. Here's the comparison that finally made this click for me. Smart Sophie sets up a $50 transfer on payday and then forgets it exists. Careless Chloe swears she'll save whatever's left over at the end of the month. 12 months later, Sophie has $600 and a slightly calmer nervous system. Chloe has nothing, and the exact same anxiety she started with, because there is never anything left over. There never is. The leftovers always get eaten by something. Now stretch that across a full working life, and it stops being cute and starts being almost unfair. Say Sophie puts away $200 a month, starting young, earning about 7% a year after inflation. After 25 years, she's sitting on roughly $160,000, even though she only ever put in $60,000 of her own money. Chloe does the exact same $200 a month, but waits 10 years to start. She ends up with around $60,000. That 10-year delay quietly cost her about $100,000, and she barely felt it happening, because the cost of waiting never shows up on a bill. Choken isn't about the size of the transfer. It's about making the decision one single time, automating it so willpower never has to enter the room again, and letting time do the heavy lifting while you sleep. If those bigger numbers feel out of reach right now, start embarrassingly small. $5 a week that actually leaves your account quietly beats $500 a month you keep promising yourself for someday and never quite send. The size matters far less than the fact that it happens, on its own, without you having to feel brave or disciplined on any particular morning. And here's where the US numbers get genuinely uncomfortable. The American pattern is earn, spend, and hope something's left to save. The Japanese choken model is earn, save, then spend whatever remains. Credit card debt in Japan is nearly non-existent, partly because of this ordering. Most Japanese credit cards auto-pay the full balance every month by default. Carrying a balance is culturally unusual. In the US, right now in 2026, total credit card debt has crossed $1.25 trillion, with the average balance sitting around $6,700 to $6,800 per cardholder, and the average interest rate hovering above 21%. Nearly half of all cardholders carry a balance month to month. That's not a character flaw in Americans. It's the predictable result of a spend-first system running exactly as designed. Number 3 is the one most people have vaguely heard of without ever applying it to money. Hara hachi bu. Eat until you're 80% full. It comes from Confucian teaching, practiced widely in Okinawa, which has one of the highest concentrations of people who live past 100 anywhere on Earth. Most Americans eat until discomfort. We pile plates, we supersize, we order the appetizer and the entree and the dessert, and feel obligated to finish everything, because we paid for it. Apply that same 80% rule to your whole financial life, and it means you deliberately leave roughly 20% of your income untouched. If you bring home $4,200 a month after taxes, you live as though you earn $3,360. That leftover $840 goes straight into savings and investments automatically. You never touch it, because it never enters your spending reality in the first place. Right now, the U.S. personal savings rate sits at roughly 3%. Hachi targets 20%. That gap, 17 points, is the entire difference between retiring anxious and retiring comfortable. On a $60,000 salary, it's the difference between saving $1,800 a year and saving $12,000. Over 30 years at 8% average returns, that gap compounds into the difference between roughly $220,000 and $1.4 million. Same salary, same job, same life, different ceiling. Because that's really what this habit is about, treating 80% as your ceiling instead of your floor. 80% of your income spent, 80% of your closet filled, 80% of your weekend scheduled. That remaining 20% isn't empty space. It's margin. And margin is where wealth actually lives. The room where an opportunity can be seized without going into debt, and where an emergency stays an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. A woman named Carla, who works in hospital administration, started applying this to her finances about 18 months ago. She calculated 80% of her take-home pay, around $3,600 out of $4,500, and committed to living inside that boundary. The remaining $900 went to a high-yield savings account and a Roth IRA. In 18 months, Carla saved and invested over $16,000. She told me the hardest part wasn't the spending cut. It was rewiring her brain to see 80% as abundant instead of restrictive. Number 4 is kaizen, continuous small improvement. Most people know this word from manufacturing. Toyota made it famous. But in Japanese daily life, kaizen applies to everything, including money, and the principle is simple. You never overhaul your life in one dramatic move. You improve by 1% repeatedly over a very long time. Applied to money, kaizen looks almost insultingly small. This month, you cut dining out spending by 10%. Not 50, 10. Next month, you raise your retirement contribution by 1%. The month after, you cancel one subscription, then negotiate one bill, then swap one brand name product for the generic. Each change is so small, it feels insignificant. Each change is so easy, it requires almost no willpower. But 12 months of kaizen produces a completely different financial life than the one you started with. And you barely feel the transition happening. Here's why kaizen beats dramatic financial overhauls, and it's actual neuroscience. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, activates when you attempt big changes. It reads large shifts as a threat. That's exactly why most people who radically slash their budget in January have abandoned it by March. The change was simply too large, and willpower eventually lost the war. Kaizen flies under the amygdala's radar entirely. 1% improvements don't trigger resistance. They accumulate unnoticed until one day you look up and realize your savings rate went from 4% to 18% over the course of a year. And you genuinely can't pinpoint the exact moment it happened. Number 5 is ikigai, your reason for being, applied directly to money. In the West, it's been popularized as a career-finding framework. The intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But in Japan, ikigai isn't about career optimization. It's about having a purpose that gives structure and meaning to daily life. Gardening, cooking for your family, teaching, staying healthy into old age. When you apply ikigai to money, it answers a question that budgets and apps and investment calculators never ask. What is the money actually for? Most Americans accumulate money without purpose, or spend it without intention. There's no guiding philosophy underneath the behavior. Ikigai gives you that philosophy. When you know exactly what your money is for, when you've identified the specific life you're building, every spending decision becomes a vote for or against that life. My friend Terrence defined his money ikigai as being present for his daughter's childhood without financial stress. Once he had that clarity, every unnecessary purchase became an obstacle to his actual reason for being, not just expensive, but irrelevant. He didn't need willpower to stop impulse buying. He needed purpose. The impulse purchases didn't just feel expensive after he found his ikigai. They felt beside the point entirely. Number 6 is wabi-sabi, the appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. This might be the most profound Japanese aesthetic idea on this entire list, and it is the direct antidote to the consumer culture that runs American spending. A cracked bowl that still holds soup. A wooden table with scratches that tell the story of 100 family dinners. A sweater with a small mend that reminds you how long you've loved it. In America, imperfection is a reason to replace. A scratch on your phone screen, new phone. A scuff on your shoes, new shoes. A slightly flattened couch cushion. Time to browse the furniture site. The entire consumer economy depends on your dissatisfaction with things that still work perfectly well. Wabi-sabi invites you to find satisfaction in them instead. The financial impact of this mindset shift is staggering once you calculate it over time. Americans spend roughly $9,500 a year on the categories most driven by aesthetic dissatisfaction: apparel, home furnishings, consumer electronics. If wabi-sabi cut that spending by even 25%, by helping you keep things longer, repair instead of replace, and genuinely appreciate what you already own, that's $2,375 a year redirected. At 8% over 25 years, that's roughly $183,000, built entirely from a philosophy of finding beauty in what you already have. There's a related craft called kintsugi, the old Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. When a bowl cracks or shatters, instead of throwing it away, the pieces are joined back together with lacquer mixed with gold dust. The crack doesn't get hidden. It gets highlighted, traced in a bright golden seam, so the bowl becomes more striking and more valuable than it was before it ever broke. Now picture that exact mindset pointed at your whole financial life. The wobbly chair gets a screw tightened instead of a trip to the furniture store. The jeans get a patch and become the comfortable ones you reach for first. The budget that fell apart during a rough month gets repaired and reinforced, not abandoned in a wave of shame. Wealth is not built by people who replace everything the moment it disappoints them. It's built by people who quietly fix what they have and keep going. Number 7 is osoji, a tradition performed at the end of each year in Japan. Families thoroughly clean their entire home, discard what no longer serves them, and enter the new year with physical and mental clarity. It's not spring cleaning. It's more intentional than that. A ritual of letting go. Applied to finances, osoji becomes an annual reset. Once a year, ideally in December or January, you sit down and conduct a complete audit of your financial life. Every subscription, every recurring charge, every insurance policy, every investment allocation, every debt balance, every auto pay. You review it all. Cancel what isn't serving you. Renegotiate what can be lowered, and realign everything with your current goals. Most people set up financial systems once, and then never revisit them. Subscriptions pile up. Insurance premiums creep. Investment allocations drift away from targets. In my first financial osoji, I found $318 a month in charges I'd completely forgotten about or no longer needed. That's $3,816 a year that was quietly draining from my account while I wasn't looking. Number 8 is teinai nakurashi. It translates loosely as careful, attentive living, and it's essentially having a small love affair with the ordinary things you already own. Picture someone slowly wiping down a wooden table after dinner, folding laundry with actual attention, hand-washing a favorite mug, and setting it carefully in the rack instead of flinging it in the sink. It sounds like something from a calm little video with soft piano music, but there is hard money hiding inside it. When you treat your things with care, they last. Shoes get polished and resoled instead of replaced. A coat gets brushed and hung instead of crumpled on the floor. A pan that gets cleaned properly lasts 10 years instead of 2. Careful living also slows your hand at the exact moment of buying. When you actually pay attention to what you own, you stop drowning in cheap stuff you have to keep rebuying every few months. I used to replace the same $5 items over and over, never noticing the slow bleed because each one felt too small to matter. Add up a year of those tiny replacements, and it's a real number. Now, I buy a little better, take care of it, and it stays with me. The quiet magic is that attention is free. It costs you nothing but the choice to slow down for a few seconds and treat your own life like it's worth maintaining. Number 9 is nemoashi, a quieter, more strategic habit that comes straight from how the Japanese prepare for big decisions. The word literally describes digging carefully around the roots of a tree before you move it, loosening the soil, protecting the roots, so the tree survives being transplanted. In daily life, it means doing the patient groundwork before any major financial change, so that when the moment finally comes, the success is almost already baked in. Most expensive mistakes happen when we move fast and hot. We see the car, we feel the rush, we sign the papers that same afternoon while the excitement is still loud. And then we spend the next 4 years paying for 10 minutes of feeling good. Nemoashi is the cure for that impulse. Before any big purchase, you quietly prepare the ground. You research without rushing. You wait. You let the want sit there and prove whether it's real or whether it was just a mood wearing a costume. I have a rule now. Any purchase over a few $100s has to survive 30 days of me thinking about it before I'm allowed to buy it. About half the time, the urge quietly evaporates on its own, and I get to keep both the money and the calm. The other half of the time, when it survives the full 30 days, I buy it with total confidence and zero guilt, because by then, the decision has actual roots underneath it. And if a full 30 days feels impossible, even 3 nights of sleeping on a purchase will save you more over a year than any clever budgeting app ever has. The urge to buy is always loudest in the very first hour, when it's shiny and new and whispering that you deserve it. Give it a little time and a little air. The thing you absolutely had to have at 11 p.m. often looks like a stranger's idea by breakfast, and you get to quietly keep the money it would have cost you. Number 10. We end on the soft one, and it might quietly be the most important habit of all. Mono no aware is a gentle awareness that nothing lasts. A tender appreciation for how everything is quietly passing. The cherry blossoms that bloom for barely a week are the classic image of it. At first, this sounds like the opposite of money advice, because the entire consumer world runs on the promise that the next thing will finally make you happy, and then keep you happy forever. But when you really start to feel how temporary everything is, something shifts inside you. You stop trying to buy permanence, because you can see there's no such thing for sale. You stop chasing the upgrade that was always going to need its own upgrade in 2 years. You start wanting less, not because you're grimly denying yourself, but because you can already see how much of what you have right now is quietly precious. The people I know who are truly calm about money almost all share this one quality. They are not hungry in that endless way. They look around at an ordinary kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday evening, kids arguing, dinner half made, and they feel, just for a moment, that it is enough. That feeling is the whole entire game, because a person who already feels like they have enough does not need to spend their way toward a finish line that keeps quietly moving further away. Contentment is not a lucky personality trait you're simply born with or without. It's a habit you practice the exact same way you practice saving. One ordinary evening at a time. Mono no aware is the reminder that the wealth was never only sitting in the account. A good amount of it was sitting at your table the whole time. So tonight, before you go looking for the next thing that promises to finally complete you, try looking around at what's already sitting here in front of you. Everything I've described in this video, every one of these 10 habits, operates on the same principle that compound interest does. Small, consistent inputs, repeated over time, producing results that are wildly disproportionate to the effort. A $3 notebook and 10 minutes a day of choken doesn't sound like a wealth-building strategy. Neither does leaving 20% of your plate empty, or finding beauty in a scratch table. But these tiny behaviors, stacked on top of each other, practiced day after day, month after month, year after year, produce something that no income level can produce on its own. They produce a relationship with money that's grounded, intentional, and sustainable. The wealthiest people I've studied, and I don't mean the flashiest or the highest earning, I mean the ones with the deepest financial security and the least financial anxiety, share one trait. They understand how money works at a fundamental level. They understand compound interest. They understand the difference between an asset and a liability. They understand that $1 saved is worth more than $1 earned, because it arrives without tax, without effort, and without burnout. That understanding has a name: financial literacy. It's the soil that every one of these Japanese habits grows in. Without it, kakebo is just a notebook. Mottainai is just a word. Choken is just a concept you heard about in a YouTube video and forgot by next week. With financial literacy, these habits become a system, a quiet, boring, profoundly effective system that builds wealth the same way a Japanese garden grows. Slowly, intentionally, with every element placed for a reason. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed, nothing performed for an audience. The woman I was 2 years ago, sitting at her kitchen table surrounded by things she didn't need, bought with money she didn't have, carrying a credit card balance that made her stomach hurt every time she opened the app. That woman didn't need more income. She needed a different philosophy. She needed to learn that wealth isn't built by earning more. It's built by understanding more. The habits came after the understanding. The results came after the habits. Japan figured this out a long time ago. These principles are over a century old in some cases. They survived world wars, economic collapses, and cultural transformations because they work. They're built on respect for money as a resource, respect for yourself as the steward of that resource, and the quiet discipline to protect both. You don't need a bigger paycheck to start building wealth. You might already earn enough. You just need a notebook, a pen, and the willingness to pay attention to where your money is actually going. That's where it starts. That's where it always starts. If any part of this landed for you, you already know what the next video needs to cover, because I only scratched the surface of what choken and osoji can actually do once you take them past 10 minutes a day. I'm Drek. I'll see you in the next one.